Hi, this is Mike. Welcome back to the Moodle Programming series. The goal of this series is to develop a custom Moodle block. In this session, we will cover instance configuration. There's a lot to cover, so we're going to do this in two parts. The first part will simply allow the content to be modified in each instance. Let's go to the development page and blocks. For the most part, we follow this tutorial. We've covered the 4 basic files that are needed. We've added content. And now we're going to do some instance configuration. In order to do that, we need to add a file to our block directory, and the name of it is edit_form.php. In that file, we'll need to place this code snippet. Let's go back to our NetBeans and let's create a new file. And edit_form. We'll just paste what we had copied from that other page here, and we will need to modify the class name to our hello world. Currently we have a form already. Since instance configuration is default with 2.0, we already have turn on editing. Let's move that block up, be a little bit easier. Okay, so configure hello world block. This is instance configuration. What we're going to do is we're going to add a couple elements eventually, to this instance configuration. And the first one that we're going to add is a text box to where we can modify the block's content. This reference, this function specific_definition, passes a parameter of mForm. Well, that mForm refers to is this form here. So we're going to simply add these elements to the current form. That's how basic it is. Moodle does a pretty good job for the API for forms. Let me show you where that's at. There's a link to the Moodle form library. And here it explains everything in a lot of detail. Gives some examples. Use field sets to group form elements. The add element function, and then how you would add different elements, HTML elements, to the form. It goes into a lot of detail, so you can read that on your own. The first element that we're going to add is actually a field set, and it's actually a legend to a field set, and the element type is header followed by a name and then a string that would be the label for the legend. So let's take a look at that. And that's exactly what we have here. Section header title according to language file. And the header is the type of the element that we're adding. This is simply the HTML name, the config header. And then this particular language string is a site level blocks setting label. So we'll go with that. The next is we're going to add a text element, and its name is actually text, but it's going to be in the config object. And you'll see how that works out. This is a convention in Moodle that any of these elements, any of these variables, any of the elements that we add to HTML, in order for them to be saved, we need to append it with config underscore. Otherwise, it will not be saved. Moodle will not recognize that, and it will not save it into the configuration for that specific instance. Here we have the name of this element, and we'll rename that. It says block string. We'll rename that to input content input label, and it's associated with our hello world block. So we'll actually need to add this to our string language string file. So we'll do that. Now let's copy this. And we'll name it, just like we named it over there, content input label. And we'll just call it content label. Or was content, block content. Okay, save that. Now we're almost there. We have one more little item that we need to add, and let's go back to the blocks page, tutorial page. We need to add this little snippet here to where we are grabbing the config text, the element that we just added. We need to check to see whether its value is empty or not. If it has a value, then we're going to set the content, the block's content, to that value. So let's go back. Now this is actually in our block class, and what we need to do is instead of just directly applying this string here, this will be done dynamically. So we'll comment that out, paste in our little logic statement from the tutorial. So what this does is it checks to see whether this config text member variable is empty, not. So that means there would be something in it. If there's a value in it, then we're going to take this config text and assign it to the content text, just as we did down here with a literal string. Now we're going to do it dynamically based on what's in our instance configuration. So let's save that. One more thing. Now we need to increment our version, and we'll just add a 1 to that, an hour. Save. Now when we go to Moodle, now we should pick up that there's been a version change on that specific block. And sure enough, current version, new version, needs to be upgraded, status to be upgraded. So we'll click on Upgrade Moodle Database now and continue. And it literally is updating the database, and I'll show you that in just a second. Okay, so let's go to Home. Not sure why it does that. So since we don't have, the way it's set up is it's not showing anything, and I'm not exactly sure why that is, but it really is kind of a trivial point. Here we can see that we've added a new configuration element to our block. So if we just saved it as it is, the block content's going to show up over here just as we would expect it to. Why it didn't initially, I'm not sure, but again, it's not really that big of a deal. The values that are saved here, the values that are saved in this configuration element for this specific instance is actually saved in the database. So I've installed phpMyAdmin on this server. If you want to install phpMyAdmin as well, or use some other MySQL tool, go to DigitalOcean, go to Community, and then simply type in phpMyAdmin, and you'll see a really nice, this how to install and secure phpMyAdmin on a CentOS 6.4 VPS. It'll go through in detail as to how to install that. So that's a good reference. Now let's go ahead and let's look for the block instances table. And let's search for the block name. We want to search for block name Hello World. Okay, we have one instance. And there's parent context ID, page type, pattern, type it, a bunch of values. Then we have this config data. This config data is 64 base, or base 64 encoding. So let's go ahead and just go to a decoder. Actually, I just Googled this, just looked up base 64 decode encode online and found this site. Base 64 is used a lot in email. So if we decode that, we can see that is exactly what we have. It's the default. You can see that the default value is there. Now, if we added more instances, which let's go to the sample course, and let's add an instance of Hello World. Now let's go back to the database and run that query again. Now you can see we have two instances. And in this instance, the page type pattern is course view asterisk. And there's no configuration data on this one because we haven't actually gone in and saved that. On the instance configuration side, we haven't actually saved. I think what we could do here is if, let's just add an else. So let's say that if it really is empty, then let's set the content text, oops, and let's actually save that. Let's go back to our site. And let's simply just refresh this page. Since that is in the get content area, I'm thinking that it should actually update. Yeah, there it is. This is a default value, so that's why it didn't show up. Our logic was a little incomplete. Well, that's about it for this session. I'm trying to make these as short as possible, and we'll continue with instance configuration in the next session. Thanks a lot, and see you then.